everyone. My name is Melissa Raspberry, and I'm from the American Institutes for Research. We have the honor and pleasure of managing and facilitating the CS for All Teachers community. We're so excited for tonight's webinar and glad that you are here with us. We have a wonderful panel of guests to share their knowledge and skills and using cooperative learning strategies for the CS classroom. We're so excited to have you as our participants as well. It was nice to see that several of you got connected via audio. We do ask that you please mute yourself if you're not talking. There will be opportunities for you to ask questions, which you can either do in the chat window or by letting us know that you have a question and speaking orally. But for the moment, if you'll look at your top toolbar and either look for the little microphone icon or the telephone icon, depending on how you got connected, and go ahead and mute yourself. There should be an arrow that creates a drop-down menu, and it'll give you indication to mute. Or if you have it globally on your computer or your phone, you can do that as well. We will have, again, interactivity and want to have you involved in the conversation, both through the chat and orally, so we're looking forward to you on that note. But with that, I'll be here. If there's any questions or concerns around the technology, I can help you in the background. But otherwise, without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Nicole, who will be our hostess for the evening. So Nicole, take it away.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm super excited to have my panelists here tonight, my guests. They are a team of folks that I'll be introducing here in a minute. This webinar is about cooperative learning strategies for the computer science classroom, which is, I think, a great time to get kids engaged in computer science. Sometimes can be seen as kids are on computers and not really engaging with each other. So this is a perfect conversation. So we're going to start out with a poll. And we've got the question, I'd love to hear about how you use cooperative learning strategies in your class. If you've never used cooperative learning strategies, that's fine as well. But we want to kind of hone in and see what experience we've got. And we'll hear from some experts. We'll have some question and answer time where if you've never used these strategies, we can kind of guide you as well. So you can go ahead and click which radio button best matches your experience. That would be great. Looks like we've got 4 people who have used cooperative learning. Maybe that is our 4 panelists up front. So I'd love to see if we can get a few more who are on tonight, see if they've used it. Nice. All right, looks like we've got someone who's new to cooperative learning strategies. So hopefully as you walk away tonight, there'll be some tips and tricks that you can take to the classroom tomorrow or even try it on Monday. So thank you for bringing us back to the slide deck. Let me go ahead and introduce everyone who's with us tonight. My name is Nicole, and I'll be moderating. I'm a high school teacher in Salt Lake City, Utah. I teach Exploring Computer Science. I teach the AP Computer Science Principles, and I've been lucky enough to be an ambassador for the CS for All Teachers community for the last couple of years. And so I get to run webinars, and I'm super excited to have with us Rebecca. And Rebecca is from PA Homeschoolers. She teaches AP Computer Science Principles online, and she's been an AP Computer Science Principles reader. So we've got Blake, and Blake is with us from Millbrook, Alabama. He teaches Exploring Computer Science, AP Computer Science Principles, AP Computer Science A, the Java course, for those of you that aren't familiar with the difference. He's also an AP CSP reader, and he is an AP CSP NIMSY consultant. And we've got Ruth with us as well. She is a high school teacher in Massachusetts, teaches AP Computer Science Principle, AP Computer Science A, Engineering, and Robotics, and is an AP CSP reader. And we've also got with us Jeff Gray, who we'll hear from tonight as well, who's from Alabama and has been a PI in a lot of different grants, and he has been the main PI of this grant with the cooperative learning strategy. He has also piloted the AP Computer Science Principles. He's run a couple different MOOCs for CSP. He's a code.org facilitator as well as a software engineer researcher. So this is super exciting to have our guest with us tonight. So I first wanted to just kind of start off with what is cooperative learning. Some of you might have heard about it, and it's really about getting students engaged. It's powerful. It's revolutionizing how we teach and the whole learning process. And so it's going to be a little bit of hearing from the teachers how they use those structures in their classroom. These structures are carefully engineered to get students to interact and to get them to not only cooperate in talking and communication, but get everyone participating in active engagement. It's not just about groups, but really strategies to boost their confidence. And I think this time of year is when students kind of like, oh, it's spring, and I've been in class all year, and they kind of like taper off in their engagement. So this is a perfect time to hear some successful strategies that have worked. There are a lot of different strategies that you may have heard of. We're going to hear about a few tonight, kind of how they set up the strategies, tips and tricks, and we'll even get to demo one. So be ready, those who have joined with us, to demo some. But here are some of the strategies that you may have heard about. Some of the benefits of the cooperative learning is that it engages all the students, not just that one student that you call on, or maybe just that table that you're calling on. And as students are engaging together in groups, it helps lower anxiety because they have their group to help out with. It promotes natural language acquisition, so if you're thinking about your ESL students or your students who might be shy, this is a great way to bring them in. And then it helps develop that fluency as we sidestep the transfer gap of what are we doing in class, what do you know, and then how do you now apply it. And so we're going to go ahead and start off with Rebecca. So I'll turn the time to hear from Rebecca and how she kind of got started and a strategy that she uses in her classroom.
Hello. Thanks for having me today. First, I have put an open ask in the chat. I'm looking for 4 volunteers to help demonstrate my strategy in a few minutes. So if you're interested, if you could type into the chat, hey, I'm happy to help, that would be great. Let's see. First of all, I guess I can say that I'm a good example that anyone can be part of computer science and anyone can learn to code because I don't have much of a computer science background. I'm still learning, and I've been getting pretty good at it, though. I have to say, it's been a good process. So I guess that's the best way to introduce myself is with that, I guess. I think all students can learn to code and all teachers can learn to code, and the trick is figuring out how. For me, I started off with a background in English, and after learning that I was going to have a baby girl and that I wanted to quit and stay home with her, I needed to figure out something else I could do at home to kind of stay engaged in education, and I didn't want to quit teaching completely. And I had this opportunity to teach computer science principles online for homeschool students thanks to my mother-in-law. She has been teaching CSA forever and basically said, Rebecca, you can do it. And I said, me? Really? I don't think I can. And thanks to her determination and her confidence in me, I really learned all I could very quickly. And so I'd say the best thing that anybody can have to encourage them with computer science is a good role model or someone to push them into it and say, obviously, you can do it too. And so I'd encourage you to be that for your students. For me, I started with that. I quickly went through all the code.org material, which is what I'm still teaching with. And then from there, I reached out for all the professional development I could find. And Jeff Gray happened to be running this incredible cooperative learning project and was willing to work with me. So I was happy to get involved there. I have a background with middle school mostly. I've taught everything pretty much at this point, but mostly middle school English and math. And so I was familiar with cooperative learning strategies, but not with computer science. So while most teachers came to the cooperative learning project with a background in computer science and learned the cooperative learning, I think, I definitely came from the other end. And it's been a great experience. So that's a little bit about me there. It looks like I do have a volunteer. Thanks, Brenda. And I'm sure Michelle would love to help, right? Maybe Jeff, you can help too? We'll get some volunteers here to test this strategy. Don't worry, it's an easy question. It's nothing too complicated here. All right, so first, let me tell you a little bit about my strategy. So this is a strategy that I've used with my online classes, but I've also used it in person before computer science just as a middle school English teacher. And it's called Debate Team Carousel. And the idea is that you'll give each cooperative learning group of 4 students a set of papers. Everyone will have a debate paper, and they'll start by stating their opinion on a topic. And once they've stated their opinion on the topic, then after 30 seconds or however long of the time you set, they're going to rotate papers around in a group and add on to each other's opinions. And this is something that works really well in person, but it's something that can also be done online. And so it works really well in my classroom online as well. So we're going to try it online today, and it will give you a good idea of how you could use it in any setting. So to do a debate team carousel, the first thing you need is to pick a great debate topic. Computer science is just a fantastic resource for this, a fantastic subject to be using the debate team carousel because there's so much going on that we can debate. You can talk about net neutrality, you can talk about data privacy and targeted advertising. My students had a lot of fun with that one. You can talk about the digital divide and how the internet can't be for everyone if everyone does not have equal access to it and equal ability when using it. So pick a good topic, find some text that support it if you want your students to do background reading depending on your level of students. And then once you've done that, the rest is not too hard. You'll write the debate topic on your carousel pages, and you'll get to see those in a minute, so that'll be clearer. And set up your Google Docs so that if you're doing it online at least, you need 4 of the same page in each Google Doc so that each team will be sharing the same Google Doc and can easily all edit at the same time. And that's assuming you're in a one-to-one classroom. Otherwise, just make sure you're printing out 4 pages for each group of 4 students. So everyone has their own paper. Okay, once you've done all of that set up, and for me, I like to have then all of my Google Docs for my class set up into a Google folder where I can just see all of the different docs right next to each other and share links with students quickly when the time comes. And I think this is going to be much clearer once we demonstrate it. So basically, you'll be rotating through the pages within a set time limit, just as if students are passing papers. And then once time is up, you want to have the students share out either with the whole class and kind of do little presentations about what they've learned, or you can just post them on a bulletin board or on a discussion forum if you're online or on something like that. And then they can also serve as a great review for students leading up to any tests you might happen to have. I'm thinking of our AP tests coming up. Okay, let's see. So when I was starting to do this online, there are some tips and tricks that really helped me to make this successful, and I think these would work in class too. I'd say for the first time you do a debate team carousel, leave yourself about 15 minutes more than you think you'd need just to explain it to students, to give them time to transition and to get them used to the strategy. The first time you do any cooperative learning strategies, I'd say you really need some pre-teaching time built into your lesson, and then as your students get used to the strategies, they'll move through them a lot quicker, and you won't need that time built in. If you're going to have the students debating a pretty complicated topic and you're using it to really build on to instruction, then assign your text ahead of time or give students time to read in class before they start to debate. I've recently come across a metaphor that was saying, yes, we want our students to be creative, but the creativity needs to be built on something that they already know. You can't think outside of the box if you don't know what the box is. So it's important for students to kind of have that foundation of knowledge for them to build on and debate. So have them prepared for the debate. I would say also group students carefully. You can set them up heterogeneously so that they can help each other, but sometimes students will encourage each other to deeper thoughts. If you put the students who are really knowledgeable all together, then they can really push each other further. And if you push the students who don't know much to all work together, then well, someone has to come up with an idea. They can't all rely on that one smart person in their group. So sometimes I like to group homogenously for that reason. But you know your students best and how to group appropriately there. Do set up a timer. I find that displaying the timer has helped most of my students because then they know they only have 30 seconds or 2 minutes or 5 depending on your topic, and that can keep them on track. But especially helps students with ADHD or ADD. That time limit pressure really helps them to focus. I'd say definitely remember to publish the debate docs later so that the students aren't just limited to their own perspectives within their cooperative learning group. Make sure they're able to read each other's thoughts too. And for those of you teaching AP-CSP, this is definitely great for the Explore Performance Task Prep because you can have them really focus on benefits and harmful effects of society, economy, and culture. All right, so I've been talking through the volunteers, but it looks like we have a few here. We are a fairly small group today, so I think I'm just going to put the link into the chat for everyone at this time, rather than taking the time to really private message and send that link. I think we can do that. All right, so I will send you all this link today. You can all click on that to open it. And it looks like I have a couple of volunteers here. So let's see. Brenda, will you please take over page number 1? So click on that link and put your name on page number 1. Let's see. Amber, this is really easy, I promise. Long day or not, you'll be fine. Please be volunteer number 2. Nancy will put you as volunteer number 3. And Michelle, will you be volunteer 4? So I will share my screen now so we can all watch. Of course, you have the shared Google Doc too, so you can see there as well. So you see here on the shared doc that Brenda's name is on page 1. We scroll down, we should see Amber's name on page 2. Perfect. Page 3, we have Nancy. And for page 4, we have, I think, Michelle is going to be page 4 there. So Michelle, you'll stick your name right there where it says first writer's name. You're a writer number 1 for your individual pages. So you can see on this doc that each member of this cooperative learning team has their own page. One other thing to remind students of, if you're trying this with one-to-one tech, is tell them to stay on their page. They have to keep their arguments concise. If they bleed over onto someone else's page, everything will shift, and that will be kind of annoying. So for the most part, students are pretty good about that. Okay. So we have a simple debate question here because we're just demonstrating this now. You can make your debate question more complicated. If you're doing this in a classroom, everyone would have a printed page, but online, the other advantage of doing it with technology is you could put a link in here to an article and have them all read the article linked for 10 minutes before you start. Okay, so what I'm going to do is give you each just, I don't know, 30 seconds, because we'll just rotate through this quickly, to answer this debate question in your box number 1. So for Brenda here, you'd be looking at summarize and state your opinion, box number 1, and so on. So Amber, you'd have box number 1 there. Perfect. Nancy, you've got box number 1 there. And Michelle, did we lose you? Let's see. I can't see the chat while going here. Let's see. I think there's a button for that. Okay, for the sake of time, because I can't find the chat right here. Hey Jeff, can you please jump in as the page 4 writer there?
Michelle just asked for the email link. I just sent her the link.
Ah, okay, thanks. I can't see the chat while looking full screen, so that's helpful.
She said she's blocked.
Okay. So as a teacher, if you've shared all these links with your students, you'll kind of have this view like we do now, where we can kind of hover and watch what everyone's writing. And so this is an easy classroom management technique, and you can keep everyone on track that way. For my class, I would then have lots of tabs open with everyone's different answers, and I could adjust the time as needed too. So I think it's been about 30 seconds. So for those of you responding to prompt number 1, try to finish up. If you don't have all your thoughts, it's okay. Just finish a sentence or two, and then we're going to rotate. All right, so at this point, we're going to rotate. So to rotate, Brenda, you will move on to page 2. And when you move to page 2, you're now going to add something to box number 2. Amber, you're moving on to page 3, and you'll add something onto box number 2 as well. Nancy, you're going to move on to page 4. And since there's no argument here to begin with, you get to add a first argument to box 2. You'll still keep going with box 2. We could just pretend that this student had a frustrating day and just wrote, I don't know, in big letters. That's fine. Sometimes that happens in class. Everyone has their off days. And then if there was a person number 4 here, oh, there we go, Michelle. Welcome. All right, go ahead, Michelle. And of course, when Michelle is finished, she can move up to box 1 to add on with the argument there. Brenda, that's a great idea. Adding your name to the front of your argument helps us to track how this rotation is going. And of course, if you were doing this in person with students, the students would just pass their papers rather than scrolling down to the next page. As a teacher, this is when you can be walking around, monitoring. You can notice students that are struggling and encourage them, or you can push students who seem to be finished early to expand on their thoughts or to add quotes from the text or things like that. This can also be a good time for you to informally assess what they know and see what points you'd want to point out or elaborate on with the whole class when you're finished. All right, so once we've moved through this, we'll say rotate again. So now I believe that would put Brenda, who is in box 2. You can move to box 3 on page 3. Amber, you were on box 2 in page 3. You'll move on to box 3 on page 4, and so on. Everyone will scroll down to another page, and whoever's on page 4, come up to page 1 again. And we're rotating through, and now we're adding opposing arguments. With this box, now that you've stated an opinion and added a supporting argument for your peer, you're now moving on to the opposing arguments. So it looks like, I think Nancy was helping out here by adding a response before Michelle jumped in. That's fine. If there are extra opinions here and there, no problem. So Michelle, I think you are going to be up to box 3 here on page 2 for this opposing argument. All right, it looks like we're about ready to rotate on to page 4. So at this time, if you could move on to your last box on your last page, you're rotating through one more time. So that puts our first writer, Brenda, all the way up to page 4. That would mean that Amber, you're back to page 1. Nancy, you should be up to page 2. And Michelle, that puts you onto page 3 for your final box, for box 4. So please add your 2 cents. Read what's written in the first 3 boxes and add your final opinion and your reason for it on this debate question. See, someone here is back at box 2. You've got something to say, I can understand it. But please do try to move to box 4. All right, wrap up your thoughts. You got another, I don't know, 5-10 seconds to finish up your thoughts here, and we'll conclude our example. If you're introducing this strategy for the first time, I would recommend picking a really easy topic, which for computer science teachers, saying something like, should all students be required to take a computer science course? That's something we've all thought about before, so I figured it would work and everyone would have a lot of quick thoughts for it. If you're doing this with students, you could make it really fun and say, I don't know, something like cake or icing, or I don't know, something silly for them to debate, just to get them used to the format and the rotating through before you try a more challenging topic. All right, another great tip for anyone who wants to share these later with your class, if you didn't know, you can just change these last few letters at the end of a Google Doc from edit to view, and I think that's all you need to do when sharing it to make the document something that's no longer editable but shared, depending on your share settings, of course. So I'm going to end my full screen now, screen share, and go back to the chat.
I really like that last tip that you shared about changing it from share to view. I think that's one thing that we forget as teachers when we're sharing, is to make it so that all students can look at it but not edit it once we're done with that rotation. So thank you. That's a great tip.
All right. I'd like to stop sharing my full screen now, but it's not quite working for me here. Let's see.
So we see the presentation. If you want me to move to the next slide.
Yep. That was the end of my presentation. Thank you all for helping to volunteer and demonstrate this. And I'll put the link in the chat when I get my settings back. We can move on to Ruth, though. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. So let's go ahead and hear from Ruth. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved and a strategy you use in your classes.
Hi, I'm Ruth. I'm originally from the UK. I've been a computer science teacher for 12-ish years. Actually, my undergraduate degree is in computer science. And I got involved in CSP when I moved to this country, and I attended the same summer institute with Jeff Gray as both Rebecca and Blake. I was familiar with computer science and collaborative techniques, but I went to the summer institute because I didn't really have any familiarity with the US education system. So I got to learn a lot there. The other thing that kind of makes me interested in cooperative learning is that the school that I work in is about 95% underrepresented minorities, and my classes are kind of 50% female, 50% male, and cooperative learning strategies really also help particularly these students be more involved in computer science. So the cooperative learning strategy that I'm going to talk about is quiz trade. This is something where students generate their own questions and like multiple choice questions like you see on the exam, and then they kind of peer teach each other by asking the question, making sure each other understand the topic, and then swapping those questions and moving on around the room. So like this can be done with any topic that appears on a multiple choice exam, and one of the kind of things in planning is deciding if students get to make their own questions or use questions given to them. It's not too much in terms of planning and setup for teachers. Like decide if like you need to kind of look at the questions that the kids have written, or if you trust them to write a decent multiple choice question. Like you might want to do like the generating questions separate from the kind of exchange bit of it.
The person you have called is unavailable right now. Please try again later.
La persona que usted ha llamado no está disponible en este momento. Por favor, intente de nuevo más tarde.
Message 2. Switch 141. The person you have called is unavailable right now. Please try again later.
La persona que usted ha llamado no está disponible en este momento. Por favor, intente de nuevo más tarde.
Message 2. Switch 141.
Sorry. I can't remember what I was saying. Like in terms of generating the questions, it's good for kind of identifying where students have misconceptions. So if you need to like vet the questions before they're asked at each other, or like actually provide them with the questions. And as Rebecca said, like the first time you do these things, like students need more time to kind of figure out what they're actually doing within it. And it may be that you need to kind of, in terms of setup, like pair up the students for the first exchange, otherwise they kind of just gravitate to whoever their friends are in the classroom. This slide kind of guides you through the execution. This is not something we can do in like the debate carousel. So that's a description. Each participant creates a question. They write the hint and the answer. They raise their hand, they find somebody with their hand raised, they pair up, do the exchange, and then they swap the cards, and then they move on to somebody else. So eventually, like most of the room should have seen all the questions and seen all the cards. It kind of lasts as long as you want, although it does time out eventually when everybody's seen all the questions. And in terms of tips and tricks, particularly with some of the kids who might be a little bit weaker in terms of their content knowledge, they're likely to just copy any examples you give to them, so it's a good idea to be kind of quite selective with any examples. It's good for anything you want to adapt for students with individual needs. Like they can type it and you can just print it, you can provide them with a question, and it may well be, if the kids just kind of gravitate to who their friends are, that you need to set some requirements for the number of people they have to interact with. And I've kind of got to the end.
Thank you for sharing your strategy. I think this is a great way to have students see what questions they would recommend to be on a test, and maybe pick one or two to add on there to let them know that you validate their questions. So I can imagine sometimes they might want to be sneaky and sly, put easy questions. So I like that practice with it. That's great. Students to get ready. Next, we're going to go ahead and hear from Blake. So Blake, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about how you got involved with cooperative learning and what strategy you'd like to share.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I guess I'm pretty fortunate. I was able to get linked up with Dr. Gray, being from Alabama, and Dr. Gray's like the godfather of high school computer science in Alabama. So We all get to work with Dr. Gray quite a bit. I started out really kind of like Rebecca did. I had no background in computer science at all, and after the first year of teaching computer science principles, I was looking for any professional development that I could find, and being a part of the A+ community in Alabama really helped me out. And I was able to link up with Dr. Gray, who put I guess with him and Dr. Now I'm at a loss of names, but the Dr. Astrakan and Dr. Jeff, you'd have to help me. I can't remember. Anyway, I was able to get to be a part of the group that put together and kind of helped with the study of these in the computer science classroom. So it really helped me out quite a bit. The strategy that I'm going to talk about is called pairs compare. This is my favorite strategy. It's pretty much a staple in my classroom now. It's something that when I'd really, if I've got kids who if it's a tough day for them and we're not cooperating, we're not engaged, this is something that I can kind of use and kind of come off the cuff with, and it works really well to get them talking, get them moving. You can use any topic, and where I like to use it at is I like to use it with usually definitions. Most of the time what I do in my classroom is we'll kind of start off with a warm-up that has something to do with what we're going to talk about, and then we kind of lead into the specifics of it. And with definitions, I like to ask my students to come up with their own definitions. So what I do is with the pairs compares, you have students pair up. Most of my kids are in groups of 4 at our tables. We have table groups, and we have either face partners or elbow partners that we work with. So I'll have either the face partners or the elbow partners partner up and come up with their own definition of something that we've kind of got a little bit of exposure to already with our warm-up exercise. And what I do is we always we use sticky notes, and the students individually will write down their ideas to begin with. The next thing that they'll do, like I said, I'll give them a prompt. I'll give them, okay, hey, it's time. Come up with your definition of this. They'll write their own definition down. I allow them usually a couple of minutes to think about it and write it out, and then I'll have the students share with either their elbow partner or their face partner. The partners will then take their information and kind of combine it together to come up with their own idea. And they've got a couple of minutes to do that. Each of the pairs will then, after they've come up with their own definition, they'll actually share that with the table. And then the table will come up with their definition. So we've got a group of 4 students that are then kind of working together. And what they're doing is when they do come together, is they're actually looking at what's missing from their definition that maybe somebody had in theirs, and we're coming up with a good solid definition that everyone can kind of agree on. After we've all had that chance at our tables, then we come together as a large group, and the students will share out as a large group. So then each table will actually share up with theirs, or share out with theirs, and we'll come up with a definition that the whole class can agree on. So it kind of gets them involved. And what I do, it's one of those, it's kind of one of those things. As a math teacher, I teach geometry, so we've got kids who are trying to learn theorems and things like that. And when you try to learn something word for word, it doesn't stick. So what we're doing is we're coming up with our own definition, so that way, if you've got a piece of it or you've put something into it, it'll stick with you a little bit. So that's the idea behind using the definitions, but it doesn't have to stick to that. It can be pretty much anything that you kind of preface, and you're allowing the kids to kind of explore on their own and think about and come up with. So it's like I said, I use it a lot with definitions, but it can really be anything. Some of the things that I'll say, or one thing that I will say about this is when I do this, it's usually part of something that's bigger. So there'll be another activity that we follow on with. there's one that I'll talk about as far as my demonstration. That what we do is it's more of getting them going, getting them talking, getting them into what we're doing, and at the same time they're actually learning from each other. The other thing that I would say is when I do that, I really have to make sure that I stick to time with that, because what happens is after the kids come together as a table, as their individual table groups, they really start getting into it, and it can time can get away from them a little bit. So I would say you have to be flexible with the amount of time that you want to use, depending on what the topic is. But at the same time, once you set those guidelines on how long you want to spend, I would probably say, my suggestion is to stick to those guidelines. What I did was I don't have an actual a demo to talk about, but what I've done is I've pulled like a lesson excerpt, part of a lesson plan that I use. And the lesson in this case is on abstraction. So abstraction is one of our big ideas in computer science principles. And it's probably one of the more difficult ideas for students to grasp, because it's in a little bit of everything that they touch, from the internet all the way to programming. And this is kind of the introductory that we use for abstraction. And I actually start the lesson off by showing a picture of a Van Gogh painting, it really, really, really close up, and then kind of pulling back. Doesn't have to be Van Gogh, it's just that his is abstract, and it's kind of neat to kind of see the kids kind of start figuring out, oh, well, yeah, now I know what that is. But I do that, and then we kind of talk about, we talk about abstraction a little bit, and then I have them come together. Like I said, I have them take a couple of minutes. They'll individually write their information or their ideas down on that sticky note. Then with their shoulder partner, they'll share with each other and come up with a definition they can agree on. Then, like I said, then they go to the whole table. The whole table comes up with their definition, and then after that, we come back together and we talk about abstraction. The follow-up on that is what they actually do is they have to come up with something that they do, or a real-world example of an abstraction. After that, individually, and then they actually write that down on a piece of paper. We do something called a snowball activity, and I let them have a little bit of fun with it. I'll actually stand up at the front of the class. They've written down on their paper, and they get to throw all their paper at me, and then one at a time they have to come and pick the abstraction up, and whoever picks it up has to make they have to kind of guess what the abstracted out part is. So it's really neat, but it's all part of, it goes back to them getting a really good understanding of what abstraction is. And they do that when they're coming up and they're developing their own definitions with it. Like I said, this is something that I use, I would probably say twice a week, because it's so easy to be able to implement. And especially, if you all are teachers, so you've seen those dead eyes before when all the kids are just staring at you. I kind of pull this one out and say, okay, elbow partners, let's go. And they jump right into it. And the next thing you know, the whole class is talking, we're all moving around, we're all doing something. So it really gets kids going and kind of excited about what we're doing. But that's pretty much it. Like the only tip that I would say is I don't feel like it's really a standalone that you would probably use. This is more of something that you can use in addition to. Not saying that it can't be a standalone activity. It's just that it really works well when I know that there's something else that we're going to have to do later on. That they really need to be thinking, and they've got to be moving and engaged. So,
thank you, Blake. That sounds like a great idea. And I might have to invest in stickies, because getting those kids to get up, move around, share that, I think that's awesome. And the definitions, I'm sure, are really reflective once you get a bunch of groups together to figure out what it is they came up with. So thank you. I like that idea. I'm stealing that one as well. Someone else said they're going to steal it. And I like the abstract idea. I always tell my students, think about driving a car. Do you have to know how the engine works? No. Tell me the steps to drive it. Or the worst one is that they always remember is, tell me about using the toilet. How does the toilet work? And they never forget that. I'm like, you never have to know how the inside works, just know the flesher works.
The one that I like best as far as the abstraction goes, when Chick-fil-A is huge down here, so it's, hey, what do you order when you go to Chick-fil-A? And it's like the number one. Okay, well, you say number one, they know exactly what you're talking about. And you get your Chick-fil-A sandwich, your fries, and your drink, so you've abstracted out all that information. So that all kind of goes into that lesson. So there's a lot that's a really good lesson, probably my favorite one that I do. But again, like I said, it's just so easy to be able to pull out the pairs compare and be able to throw it out there at them at any point. It's just something nice to have in your pocket that you can go to.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing. Right now, I want to take just a couple minutes to find out from those who are joining us. I remember one person said they hadn't used any cooperative learning strategies. A couple had. I'd love to find out if you have any questions that you want to type in the chat window, or if you have strategies that you use, which ones was best with what type of activities, kind of like those transitional activities Blake talked about, or activities that Ruth shared, or even that debate that Rebecca shared. If you've got some that work really well, type them up. Let's find out what works, and then we'll hear from Jeff for a little bit and find out some of the deep down details about cooperative learning. Oh, this is a great question. You can either, one of the presenters, you can type it in the chat window, or if you want to share out. Brenda just asked what strategies work best for students who might be shy. So I think that the debate carousel that Rebecca introduced, where they're just passing paper, might be a great idea for those students that might be shy.
We do something else too that I call it, I don't even really know which strategy it matches up with, but we call it speed dating. And but it's something that I've planned for that day, and they're only having to face one person for a very short period of time. But we're talking about 15 or 20 seconds. So the goal is to get for a shy student, maybe if they're just having to talk quickly, and then, hey, timer goes off, now we got to rotate. So I've got actually one that's stationary that are sitting, and then one group that actually rotates through each, and we rotate all around, and they have to talk about whatever it is that whatever topic it is or whatever we've come up with there. I don't know how well that would work for shy. The students that I have that don't do very well as far as, sitting at a long period of time staring at somebody, it kind of, they do pretty well with it because they've got their piece of paper that they're talking about in front of them. They say it, the other person says theirs, then they rotate. So it's real quick, so they don't have to think about it a whole lot.
Thank you. It looks like we've got talking chips and jot thoughts down as well. So good idea. Inside, outside circle, another name for speed dating. If your students might be a little bit too young for the dating theme, inside, outside circle. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and keep putting questions in the audience chat. And let's go ahead and turn a few minutes over to Jeff and tell us a little about your project that you got started with and how you got Blake, Ruth, and Rebecca all engaged in computer science.
Thanks, Nicole. If it's possible, I'd like to jump right to the results for this project in case I'm not able to get through some of the others. But I'm showing here some of the resources and links. So there's two links here. The first one is a set of professionally done videos at the workshop, and I think there were maybe 8 or 9 teachers at the workshop who participated in that, and they're sharing their cooperative learning experiences and strategies, and so that's something definitely we would suggest you all look at. And then the workbook that was just completed a few weeks ago. So there's a workbook with a bunch of lesson plans that were created by all the teachers who participated in the workshop, and we invite you to take a look at that. And there's also a paper from SIGSI that was published just a couple months ago that describes the results of the project. So that's kind of some resources I wanted to make sure that everybody knew about. And this project that we're talking about, where Rebecca, Ruth, and Blake were some of our participants, it lasted 3 core summers. We started in Dallas, and then we're part of the CSPD week for 2 years. And we brought some of the star teachers back from those trainings, and they asked them to help us to create the material for the workshop book, the workbook, and the videos that you see. So we had a nice collection of teachers across the U.S., as you can see here, in this map of the U.S. and some of the photos from them. So to jump back, just to quickly go over some of the where this all came from. So about 2013, Lynn Diaz, when she was helping to kickstart the CS principals with the college board, she sent several of us to a Kagan Cooperative Learning workshop. And I'd never heard of this before, and I thought it was a really neat way to take the ideas that were being applied in math and other subjects and look at how computer science can be improved. In terms of, I think Blake mentioned this before about the dead eyes looking at you, as you see in this slide here, if you've seen the Ferris Bueller movie, and how the students are just totally disengaged in that part. So the idea is that we wanted to have computer science principles, not just about curriculum, but also strategies in the classroom to kind of encourage the engagement that we were looking for. So the Kagan style cooperative learning has 4 key parts, and apologies for some of you who've seen this, many of you have seen this several times, but the PIES acronym of positive interdependence, individual accountability, equal participation, and simultaneous integration. Positive interdependence means that the classroom is really working as a team. It's not like a competitive thing where one student's always raising their hands, trying to outdo the others. Everybody's encouraging each other and working towards a common goal. And individual accountability means that no one can really sit in the back and just hang out and let everybody else kind of do the work. Everybody, if I have my classroom arranged in 2x2s, and we do something like debate carousel, everybody is expected to have some kind of individual accountability to be engaged with the team. And equal participation means that there's different timers. So someone may, 30 seconds, one person speaks, and we go into like a round robin or some of the other structures, and everyone has a fair share of time to speak. It's not one person that's dominating the classroom. And what's really neat about cooperative learning is the simultaneous interaction. Cooperative learning classrooms are loud, and administrators may not be used to that. So there's a lot of discussion going on, but just think about the multiple discussions going on with your students rather than just the teacher and student talking together. So it's really encouraging to see the cooperative learning activities and the students just getting really engaged with that. So that's kind of the background for that. And again, if you didn't catch the resources and links, we have the videos here and also the workbook, and there's a paper from CIGSE that's available on those links.
Thank you, Jeff. I love having resources that I can jump to. I know I've peeked at the videos, and it's nice to see other teachers showing you how they set it up. And I think that's kind of one of the things that I appreciate about Blake and Ruth and Rebecca, talking about those tips and tricks. I can go get a book offline, but if I don't see how it's done or hear from a teacher, like take that extra time to practice with an easy topic when you start something and then go to your content. Sometimes you don't feel successful, and so I think hearing from you teachers has been a great way that we can learn some of those tips and tricks. I do want to highlight that we have some upcoming activities and webinars from the CS for All Teachers community. We have a webinar April 23rd with entrepreneurship and computer science. And then we have Kiki versus IT who's going to be joining us and talking about AR in the classroom and using that augmented reality with handouts and different ways to engage students to get them to use the augmented reality. And if you aren't a member of the community, it is free today and every day. But we'd love to have you join the community. As you can tell from the webinar tonight, you get to hear from different people in webinars. There's free resources. The community is organized into the high school computer science principals, exploring computer science, kind of like CS in the wild. They've got a middle school and an elementary group. There's blogs. There's an event calendar. But it's a really great way to network with awesome teachers and different folks from K through university. You can download the latest ECS assessments and curriculum, and the link is at the bottom of the screen. We can stick it over here in the audience chat, but that membership is free, and you get to just connect with awesome people. And then if you have any questions, you can always email csforallteachers@air.org. You can visit the website, follow us on Twitter. They're always tweeting things. I know we have, I believe, 8 ambassadors. They have things going on all the time. I know that Jeff Gray's sharing things, and when we ran through last night, it was a little reunion for Rebecca, Ruth, and Blake, connecting back with Jeff because they had that cooperative learning opportunity. And coming to the CS for All Teachers site, you hear about some of those great opportunities that are posted all the time. And so I just want to thank our guests who came. We've got some participants who came and joined us tonight. And I want to thank Jeff and Blake and Ruth and Rebecca for spending their evening with us and preparing some strategies that we can all take into the classroom tomorrow, or we can take them back on Monday and use them to get our students engaged for the last 8 or 9 weeks left of the semester or quarter that you have. So I'll go ahead and let everyone out on time because we like to respect the time that you have. But please join us in the community. If you have friends that weren't able to join tonight, the webinar was recorded, so they can log into the community and watch the recording. Or if you want to connect with those resources, we'll go ahead and share them in a post on the CS for All Teachers community so that if you didn't get them here in the chat window, they will be available. And we do have a survey that we're going to be sharing out with y'all. It's just a couple of questions here in the chat window, so if you don't mind taking a minute to go ahead and fill out that survey, that would be great. And I hope you all have a great evening, and thanks again for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nicole, and thank you to all the panelists for being here. It was wonderful. I enjoyed the conversation, and I placed in the chat window the link to the events page where you will be able to find the recording link as well as a copy of the presentation so you can access all the wonderful resources. We thank you and hope you have a wonderful evening. Good night, everyone.